Service District meeting. This is called to order. At this time, we'll entertain a motion regarding the order of the agenda.
Specifically for the budget hearing, correct?
Did I grab the wrong one?
I think so. I think you're on a different agenda.
Let's,
Here.
yeah, I am on the wrong one. Budget hearing. All right, we'll go back. I grabbed the 11 in one folder.
So it's just a call to order and then a discussion decision regarding the adoption of the budget.
Turn it over to you guys. No,
Or the
you don't
clerk.
want to present something about it?
No budget.
What do you want us to present?
Well, just go over.
This is the first time I've
summary.
ever done this.
Go over
Normally,
a summary of where you are.
do what?
A summary of where your budget is.
Sure. So our budget for this year, do you want me to go down each line?
You can just present kind of overall and hit your hot points, and then I know the board has questions on some of your items.
Okay. So if we look at our, and when I say look at, I'm going to probably need some reading glasses because this thing is tiny. But our revenues, and just to give an idea of where we're at right now with our billable revenue, we're at a little over 1.8 million. And you notice in 2000 or FY26 budget, I put 2 million in there. And that's capturing the potential for the ground emergency medical transport, GEMT for next year. So it's probably I probably underestimated a little, but I would rather underestimate a little than overestimate our revenues. So that's how I landed on the 2 million. So total revenues, is there somewhere it's added up? Oh yeah, $5,454,209 was what we estimated. That's correct. That includes our anticipated tax revenue, as well as a couple of the other smaller line items in there. So then if you go down and go through our entire budget, we did subtract several positions out of the budget for this year over last year. So this year, compared to last year, I think full-time positions were down a total of 5 full-time positions over last year. I think it's 5, maybe it's 6. 5.
I'm trying to count. I think you are 5.
5 FTE positions over last year. So that's a significant savings on the personnel side. If you go on down, let's see, a couple of line items had to be increased. One of them is our medical supply. Medical supply, I believe right now we're running about 1,000 over what we're supposed to be for the end of the year. So that's something that had to be increased for next year.
On the supply one, with some of the new drugs that are coming out, wanting to replace old drugs, do you see that we might see a little bit of, and maybe this might be an Allen one, a little bit of a drop as they come out? Because for like the EpiPen example, those ones are expensive now, but if there is a true shift to change it, the introductory for the first year is actually coming out quite low. I think you're about like $25 per one. There's quite a few emergency medicine drugs that are actually coming out on this next go-round that could potentially lower that line, especially as it comes to the like the glucagon, things like that.
Because those are extremely expensive to try to stock, and especially when they're such a low frequency of use, but we have to have them because it's required that we carry those. When you look at one drug costing roughly $300 and then probably is going to expire, but there's nothing we can do about it because it's a required drug to carry. So yeah, those are the things that cause me to pull what little hair I have left out, because it's just a cost that we don't really use it. It doesn't really get passed along. So it's just a cost that expires on a shelf and then we have to Frustrating. So the big part of this I want to highlight is, in order to make this come out balanced, you'll see there's a contingency line, and I don't know if this was potentially going to be a question, but basically that contingency line is that amount that is not spent or not accounted for as being spent, because as everyone knows, we were having issues with our reserves. And one of the things that we feel is super important and that has been communicated from the commissioners to us, from the district commissioners to us, is that we continue to build our reserves till we get somewhere around that $2 million point, to where we don't, if we ever get in a situation again, we don't have to borrow from the county to, like we did last year. So, and then we can get to the point where we're no longer tanning, and hopefully we're well on our way to being financially stable. So that's where that $469,073 in the contingency line, that's money that hopefully will go into the reserve fund for next year that we don't spend. And we're just accounting for that. So all total, our budget for the year is $5,454,209.
So,
Does the clerk office want to add anything before we allow the board to ask questions on what Chief
So
mentioned?
I actually submitted an adjusted budget to you guys, back on, when we were working on the L2, on August 6th, that would have overall reduced the budget just a little bit.
So that's Jessica Stephanie.
Yes, from Bonner County Comptroller. It would have reduced the contingency to 316, and the total budget would have been 5.3, not 5.4. And that's because the calculations in the L2 for the urban renewal opt-outs, the ones
so
that
the
were
additional
approved.
revenue that was going to generate is
It-
offsetting?
Well, it wasn't quite as much as we were initially anticipating. So when I worked with Jeff originally, and we threw together, well, I won't say throw together, they worked really hard on it. I just did a quick overview. We threw in that plug for contingency, which was the difference between anticipated tax and actual billing revenues and their expenses. But I do think that there is a slight adjustment between the two, right? So I haven't had a chance to sit down with Jeff before this and go over it specifically to explain it all to him, but I think the actual budget number that you guys need to vote on is the 5. Well, go ahead and do the 5.4, because we can always lower it. Like, that's what he has presented. But I think before we file the L2, there may be an adjustment.
So is there a reason that we can't get that done today and vote
No,
on
you
what the
can't.
number?
You can't, oh.
No. So what I'm asking is there a reason we could go into recess, you guys can take a look at it, and we can come and get it done before today?
Yes,
Because
that
it's a
sounds
matter if you
perfect.
guys need to do that, and we have them scheduled at 11 o'clock, so we could address it and do it right this.
Yeah, I think we
First
would
time.
only need about 20 minutes.
Do you want to, we can go in recess, you guys can go and do that, and then we can come back with the number.
Sure, if that's the only correction, it
Well,
sounds
it
like there's
hasn't-
going to be questions, and if we need to,
That's what I'm asking about, is there's a discrepancy between the noticed proposed budget amount and
So we can
the
only,
numbers that you've presented that are also included in the budget forecast update for our regular meeting. So there is a discrepancy in those values of about 150,000
yeah,
that I couldn't account for or understand why they were different.
yeah.
And then my other question to that is, are we in some way in the budget clearly identifying whether or not there's a TAN anticipated? and the value, or is that gonna just be done separate from the approval of the budget?
So can we do this? Can we go into recess until 10:45? That gives them time to take a look at it, and then we come back with all of the information.
Yes.
Will that work for you? Okay, Commissioner Corn?
Works for me.
All right, so,
You said 10:45?
yeah,
Okay.
because because your time here was because you've got 2 hours here. So we can get it all done correctly right now.
Perfect.
Did you want to say something, or are we good too? All right, it's 10:14, we're going to go into recess until 10:45. And we'll turn it back over to our clerk's office.
Yes, so the document that you all have in front of you is the adjusted budget that matches their publication. So the total expenses is $5,301,787. And that included a 3% COLA for employees. And Jeff can speak to more if there's any other points in there that he wanted to talk about. The amount that we are asking the commissioners to approve today is the $5,323,976 that was published as revenues. And that includes the judgment levy. We spoke to that a little bit during the county's budget hearing. But last year, there was a judgment made based on the State Tax Commission's assessments for utilities. And the county and all of its taxing districts had to pay this judgment. And so this is our opportunity to collect that outlay of funds that we spent this last year. So it's not in this year's expenses. This reduced the contingency to $316,651.
Can we go to two items here? On our bookkeeper, we had some back and forth after you had done your presentation of, was she going to be taking on payroll or not? Where are we at with that? Because there were some HR issues that could potentially impact your costs on that line.
We have settled those.
Okay.
My last check and.
And then
so we're good.
on AEDs, what's our position in the community when they're asking the county's ambulance district to address the battery replacement? Are we giving those? And if we're giving those from our budget, are those allocated for?
So the big issue Chief Brinkmeyer would speak better to this, but he's actually helping staff an ambulance right now. The big issue we have with the AEDs is as long as and this originally came out with a grant from BNSF that Dr. Jenkins actually went out for cardiac survivability in the community. And so out of that, we were able to buy a certain amount of AEDs. I can't remember exactly how many it was, but we were trying to put them in the community where anyone could access them. What happened was we have AEDs in like a community center, for instance, that is locked. So not everyone in the community can access that at all times. So what we're trying to do is figure out where these AEDs are at, if they're able to be accessed by the community as a whole. And then if that is the case, then what we've done is we've tried to replace whatever it is, the pads or the batteries or.
Did we account for the number that we put, because the batteries are $400?
That grant is already spent, so there's no money to go buy a new one and put that out, if that makes sense.
Right, but for the ones that are already existing, are we covering the cost of the batteries? And so the Blanchard one is an example of, they wanted the county, they contacted you guys
Right.
about the battery. Are we going to be saying yes to that? And if we are, is that reflected in the budget, and how many of those did we need to allocate for?
Right.
And then looking at other budgets that could potentially be doing this, so like when I was working on the Blanchard one and the Clark Fork, some of this came from emergency management services, not the ambulance district. And so because Blanchard shouldn't need another one because they just got one, and so they're not going to need it this next fiscal year. But there's going to be others in the fiscal year that need that added in, and are we budgeting for the ones that we know are going to call? Because once they see the cost of that, they're going to come asking us to cover it.
Right. And utilizing, I mean, obviously our medical supply would be where that came out of.
You
No,
didn't put it in the AED cabinets, radio? Yeah, okay.
yeah, just the medical supplies where that comes out of, because we do have, I mean, all of our ambulances have AEDs, so we have to replace those. They're not every year though, is the thing.
Right.
So
I think it's every 4 years.
yeah.
But
And most of those AEDs have been replaced in the last 2 to 3 years, so.
okay. I just know that was a big cost with a lot of noise about who is buying the batteries, and there are more communities asking. And the way in which we did it didn't clearly say the fiscal responsibility of who was going to pay for what. And so that was one where I don't want us to get hit with anything. If we can plan for, if we're going to be buying those batteries, to say which line is that coming out of and who we know we need to give that battery to.
Right.
Or we're saying no.
How many are out in Bonner County? Is it like 100?
No, absolutely not. No, and again,
25?
Chief Brinkmeyer is the expert on that.
It's-
He's
it's
the
a-
one that
it's enough
services
that
all
the
of them.
number- a couple
It's
of-
like 6, maybe?
It's a couple $1,000s to put all those batteries in, depending, but they're not all on the same rotation of
No.
when they need the battery.
Or the pads.
So when this came in Blanchard's, there was a benefit because we actually ended up using it, which meant then we got pads when we replaced it, but it was the battery pack that came due. And so
Right. And there was no agreement
There
that
was no
happened
agreement
when we
of
put those out. It was
who
just, we
does
gave them
that.
to the
It's-
community, and then all of a sudden, the battery went bad, and it was like, the community's like, where are
we're
you
not
guys gonna
paying for
replace?
it, but it's ours.
So that wasn't part of the grant, but it's become part of the cost, and
So
I'm
you're
good with.
budgeting for that.
I'm good with
aspect.
supporting the cost of whenever these things come up, because again, if we're trying to save a life,
And I'd like us so if it's reflected here, answers my part. I'd like us to address a policy regarding when we put them in and when we're going to be the ones paying for the battery, because I equally think it's right to say, like Blanchard needs to agree that that comes out of the building. Clark Forks is on the building, so the community has access to it. And it addresses the impact of the community only has access to the AED when they're inside, if it's inside the building. And that the community access is part of the reason that we applied for the grant for that particular AED. And if they don't want to put it on the outside, then the community center then needs to pay for the battery pack, not the county, because the county is using it as a supplemental emergency service. in a
Exactly,
way, And we
exactly.
don't have access if they're not. So I think we need some guide rails on them, because there are areas like, and I'll do Mr. Martin has asked for Edgemere Grange to have an AED there. They don't use the Grange often, but is it a reasonable spot to put an AED on the outside of that building to allow access to the community? That's an argument that could be made to see if I could find another grant for that, then that would be reasonable, especially given that particular Grange is in one of those spots where it would be beneficial to the county. But I think we have to have some rules on when we pay and that we've budgeted for what that cost would be in our budget, because those once we put one out there, then upkeeping that one is all in the control of the maker of that AED, because you're stuck with it, and you're stuck with all the upgrades.
and a lot of it has to do with, and I don't want to get in the weeds on AEDs, but a lot of it has to do with, does the area have Wi-Fi capabilities? If it does, we can connect it to Wi-Fi. We can see when those batteries are down. We can see what the life is left on it, so we can kind of figure out, because otherwise, we're not going out into, we don't go out every 2 to 3 weeks,
Yeah.
and we just wait for the person to call us and say, this thing's beeping, and I don't know what's going on with it, and so.
I look forward to having the discussion at a later time regarding who's responsible for these batteries. Because it's not benefiting the county in a whole, in my opinion. It's benefiting a small radius around where that AED is located. Right?
Not really.
If it takes me 10 minutes to drive to the Grange to get the AED and 10 minutes to get back to my dad or whatever, or if I'm lugging my dad with me or whatever the case is it
Right.
pointless?
Well, and we can
So-
probably put this on an agenda at some point to discuss.
Are you saying you don't think it should be in the budget for the replacement batteries?
I'm
Is that what you're
thinking
saying?
that it was gracious enough that they got this grant and was able to help the community by supplying these things. And I would like the community to come together and have a quick little fundraiser, pancake breakfast or something to pay for the battery. That's my opinion. Then the community has some buy-in.
So I have a different position on the availability. It's the availability of when you look at our times of getting to locations, especially in the rural areas of the county, it actually helps our EMS team, because it's not that team isn't being called. So using our Blanchard situation, we had an AED to use when the person dropped they were actually at that community center. So we had the AED to start the process until emergency services got there. And so that is beneficial because when you're present and you're able to do stuff, I'm able to then, as a person, communicate what's happening to EMS that actually helps with, has my level of care increased? I can tell information based on, I've got them hooked up to this machine. So it is benefiting EMS because EMS is going to come and they're going to do their assessment of, wait, we might need a higher level of care here based on this. There is a benefit to it being in the community, and it's part of, especially depending on where you're placing these, the availability of EMS is what our taxes are paying for, the availability of, and then once we get there, we start charging. The EMS having, the communities that have these AEDs available, it's beneficial to the county as a whole because that impacts all of us. It's no different than saying they're farther away from Blanchard, we're closer to Spirit Lake, but our times actually of being approached, I think when we had a case where it took you guys 25 minutes to get down there because Spirit Lake was down in Post Falls, and people having access to stuff helps us in that situation, and it can serve also to reduce the time if they've already been worked on down there. So I don't agree that it doesn't help. I think that we have to justify when we're putting it in and we're going to absorb the cost of that battery every 4 years. I worked on the Blanchard one because I believe that it's in that gap, and I think that is similar for the Clark Fork one and for a potential look at the Edgemere Grange area when you look at our map and our service area. Do I think a place inside city limits where you're right here that we would pay that? I have a hard time with that because we're closer to this with more services, but on the outskirts, I can see the value of it. And the bulk of it, the county didn't buy these. What we did was we found so for Blanchard, because we're unincorporated, we can't write a grant. We did a pass through the county, which then passed it back to us to give us the AED, which is it was like $5,500. And then Chief comes down and does a training on this is how you use it. And then every year I do okay, we got more people. This is our first aid, Narcan, blah, 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 AED thing. So you say you want volunteers all the time. You have to have something to use.
I think it's a worthy discussion to get into more detail on, as far as I do like the idea of some level of community ownership, and also just evaluation of, I see where it can be a valuable tool, but assessing locations and access and all of those things I think are
There's
worthy.
no argument, I don't think that it's a valuable tool.
Right,
There's
so
no
I
argument.
think that we should spend more time looking at the locations, how that makes them accessible or not, and then how the cost is borne. But I think that should be a future agenda item. I think the cost is small enough within this budget that I'm okay personally with moving forward with this budget, with this in it, meaning that we make some decisions about how those dollars get spent after we review it in more detail, if that's agreeable to the
I'd
rest
like
of
to
the
see
board.
more data myself.
I would too. I do have a question about, I don't think we've yet defined professional services such as technology and human resources when it comes to an agreement between the ambulance service district and the county, and if there's going to be any cost. And so that might just be something that we're going to have to bear later, but we don't have that accounted for in this budget, to my understanding.
Correct.
Yes, but we do have the contingency line that you could do something with.
And then if we approve the budget as presented, my understanding is that the expectation would be that we're going to look at what we've been referring to as the gap amount of
The TAN.
when we have tax dollars coming in versus our expenditure requirements and whether a TAN is needed. And so then I just want to confirm that the intent would be that the TAN decision is happening outside of this budget decision,
Correct.
just so we have clarity on all of the items in front of us.
Well, and yes,
And
You are
that would be
correct on that.
At the end of this fiscal year, when we really know how much cash they have left in the bank, that'll tell us
Right.
whether or not.
And then we'll have a little bit of time to determine what we think the TAN value should be.
Correct.
To get us through the first of the year,
Yep. Exactly.
first of
The road
the
is paved already.
calendar year.
Right.
So based on the answers to those questions, I am comfortable with the budget that's been presented, and the total value that includes the judgment levy amount.
Commissioner Corn,
Yep.
Anything from
I'm
you?
good with it.
any comment from members of the public? Christian? All right. At this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Based on the information before us, I move to approve the fiscal year 2026 budget for the Bonner County Ambulance District for the total amount of $5,323,976.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any comment from the public on the motion on the table? Seeing none, deliberation by the board.
What was that total again? 5 million?
5,323,976.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, that should be the number, that's the total estimated revenue number.
At the top.
Okay.
So it's the same value because I have the benefit of speaking with the comptroller before the meeting started. It's the same value as the total proposed expenditures plus the judgment levy amount at the top, because we have to include that in how much the total taxable amount can be so that we can pay that judgment piece separate from the rest of the budget.
Okay.
Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
Understandably, that beast.
All right, roll call vote.
Commissioner Williams?
Yes?
Commissioner Ford?
Yes?
Commissioner Donald?
Yes.
All right, motion passes. It is 11:02 and this meeting is adjourned. We'll wait. Let us know when we can go in the second one.